So much, Pratima ma'am. And I think you very beautifully expressed with the geographic location of the school that one is in, or the school that's trying to make sense of how best to use this aspect of mother tongue being the language of instruction for children. And I totally agree. They are taught in the language or the native language or the mother tongue that they are immersed in right from their birth. So it comes easy to them. It comes naturally to them. I totally agree with you on that.
And it's just that, we have to start thinking of a change, because we are so steeped in the old glory of English. That's the only language that has to be taught. That's the only language, across the world, students are doing so well, even though they may not have studied through English medium schools. And English medium schools, small English medium schools are struggling because the teachers do not know how to speak English. Actually, even in our school, although we get good teachers in English, but, as Roshan said, we are continuously, having communication skill workshops for our teachers. We have made a curriculum actually for training our teachers on spoken English. So this, I'm sure most of the schools are facing this.
They are. So that is why this conversation happening in, as I said, in trying to make the best sense of this aspect of NEP. Of course, if you look at this, when you rightly touched that it doesn't take care of people on transferable jobs, especially central government employees. So there's no mention of how one caters for them. However, since we have it, let's take out the best and the most advantageous aspect of teaching in mother tongue. So my takeaway from your comments is that it's okay to use or go bilingual when it comes to helping the child to learn, and it should not be enforced on the child that one has to learn only in English. So if a teacher designs a lesson plan and she goes bilingual either in native tongue or in the language that the child best understands, it is absolutely fine. At the end of it, we are here for learning to happen.
See, now NAP is actually talking about BTech courses in mother tongue. So I mean, to reach that level, somewhere we have to start at the school level.
Yes. So one last comment from you to sum it up. What is one thing that schools should not do? Since we are talking about do's and don'ts in implementation of NEP in the best possible way that we can as a school on our own right now, what is it that they should avoid doing, keeping this mother tongue language aspect in mind?
See, it depends upon the school, Supriti. As I said, where they are situated, the area where they're working from. If they feel that they have a number of teachers who can teach, in mother tongue, all the subjects and all, it's fine to go ahead. But if they feel that it's not possible, and to train the teachers accordingly, and also financial aspect will come into place. You can't bring in so many teachers speaking, mother tongue of different mother, teaching in that mother tongue, different subjects. So, you have to look at all the logistics and financial aspect of it and then go ahead. I mean, don't jump into it until and unless you're very sure of, what you can provide to the student. Because once you give it, then to take back is very difficult. So it's better talk to the parents, counsel the parents, find out, talk to the teachers, find out from the community. I think you have to have the whole stakeholders should have a meeting together and then implement it. It's not a small thing.
Thank you so much for summing it up so beautifully. What I understand is just don't jump into it unless you have had all stakeholders in collaboration with you. Thank you so much, Mrs. Pratima Sinha. I move on to our third panelist, that's Dr. Jyoti Gupta, Founder Director, DPS Saibabad. Good afternoon, ma'am. It's a pleasure to see you here. So my question to ma'am is that NEP, so just a little prelude before that, NEP emphasizes that schools ought to give equal importance to activities like sports, music, dance, because that will help in overall development of children. That's one. Secondly, it also emphasizes when we talk about senior grades, the lines between humanities, commerce, and the sciences are now blurred. That means students have more options to pick and create their own customized streams. In addition to extracurricular or co-curricular activities and vocational skill subjects. And so since the students have such a wide spectrum of options to choose from, instead of the conventional 3 streams that we have had in the past, or still have actually, how best can school fit in the co-curricular sports and vocational skill subjects into their learning plans, considering the timetable and the time duration of the school? And what is your advice to schools in offering different subject combinations? How can they cope up with giving those customized or the options that children now choose instead of those strict three stream schools? Basically, how do schools now ready themselves for it? Jyoti ma'am.
Thank you, Supriti, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank Gaurav for inviting me on the panel today and for giving me this opportunity. Always a pleasure to be interacting with my peers and my colleagues on your platform, Gaurav, and it's Supriti was such a fine moderator, and so happy to be on the panel with you know, the everybody, all colleagues from diverse backgrounds. It was a pleasure listening to my previous colleagues. You know, you've asked one of my favorite areas, you've asked question on one of my favorite areas of the new national education policy. Don't know how you, you know, how you got to know that that's my favorite topic.
Telepathy, I would say, telepathy.
Yeah, so no silos, what you've asked me.
No silos.
And I'm really excited about this part of the education policy. And, you know, I would say that the new education, the national education policy is absolutely transformational. It is not just a policy, it is a vision. And Mr. Gandhi very rightly said that it should be the national education vision is instead of just a policy document, because it is actually endeavoring to change the destiny of our country. The children who are studying now and the teachers who are there in the schools now, this is such an exciting time for them, because there is so much to do with these children. And COVID also comes in as an opportunity here, where technology has come in a big way, and the debates that were there earlier, that you know, whether you should have the devices, you should not have the devices, how much of technology is good technology, how much the children should be learning on their own through technology. I think all the answers have been answered naturally here, and we can't go back on what we are doing right now. We only have to move forward from here. So there are, you know, there are advantages like metacognition. All of us have been talking about taking ownership of your own learning, you know, metacognition, lifelong learning, take ownership, take onus of your own learning. So all this is possible during this time because the children had to learn online. The teachers have had to ensure that the children are taking on the responsibility of their own learning. And one of the most exciting things is, you know, I've been saying it since past decades, I would say, I do not like the word activity. I do not like the word co-curricular activities or extracurricular activities. You know, when we were growing up, when we were children, we were told that pehle padh lo, padhoge likhoge to banoge nawab, kheloge koodoge to hoge kharab. So that was what was taught to us, that you will only play, dance, perform, learn music once you finished your studies, पहले पढ़ लो, पहले अपना maths कर लो, पहले अपना science कर लो, social science कर लो. After that, you go and play. You want to practice, you practice only after you finished your studies. Now, studies meant only academics. Education meant only academics. And rest, everything apart from studying your 5 subjects, after doing your academics, everything else was extra. So it was extra curricular. That means your curriculum did not include sports. Your curriculum did not include arts. Your curriculum did not, and when I talk about arts, I mean the visual arts, I mean the performing arts, I mean dance, theater, music, instruments, life skills. Now, nobody talked about that. The only the only conversation that we had was around the academics. That is, how much of maths do you do? How much of science do you do? How much of social science do you do? So everything else was extracurricular. But then came a time when we started calling them co-curricular. That, okay, it is still not a part of the curriculum. It is still not embedded into the curriculum. It is co-curricular. So there were silos. There was a very clear distinction between the academics, between the sports, between the arts, and between the life skills. But the new education policy talks about the sports in curriculum, art in curriculum, life skills embedded in the curriculum. So when you say that no lines, it is blurred, it means that there are no silos. It means now today we are looking at the 360-degree development of every child. And tell me, what better than sports can teach you to fall, to get up, and to run till the finishing line, to not give up in between. So these are very important lessons. These are very important life skills. And we are talking about new pedagogies. We are talking about sports and arts as pedagogy. We are not just talking about the children performing. We are talking about teachers using art as a pedagogy. You can use art to teach mathematics. We are talking about experiential learning. We are talking about joyful learning. We are talking about the aha moments in the classroom here. We are talking about bringing in pedagogies that make the children learn through these art forms, and they are able to also perform, side by side. So the arts and sports are taken at 2 levels, where the children are actually practicing these, and also where the teachers are using it as a pedagogy to teach the other subjects as well into an experiential mode. So, so your other question, and of course, it is not just this, it is also that come class 11 and for time immemorial, we have given importance to certain subjects. We've always said that if you are bright, you take up science, you take up mathematics. If you do not have 80%, I will not give you science, or I will not give you mathematics. I do agree that there are certain subjects that require a particular competency and capability, and there are other subjects that any child is able to do and is able to perform well in. So where you need specific competencies for science and mathematics, marks should not be the criteria. And mind you, why do the children end up getting less marks? Not because there is some problem with them, but probably at some point of time they had a teacher who was not able to clear their doubts at that particular time. Probably that time the diagnosis was not done. Probably that time the remediation was not done. So your favorite subject was the subject that was taught by your favorite teacher, because that teacher reached out to you and tried to explain to you as to what you were not able to cope up with. So those subjects become the weak points. So you were a little while away talking about the minimum levels of learning. The minimum level of learning became the target level of learning. And today we are not even talking about target level of learning. We are talking about learning outcomes. All children who do not have the learning disabilities should be able to achieve those learning outcomes in the class. Some will be able to achieve it a little earlier than the others, but then what is the point of doing the diagnosis and the remediation and doing assessment for learning and doing assessment as learning if the learning gaps are still going to exist? So the learning gaps should not exist. So today, all teachers, all of us should pledge together that when we teach in our classrooms, we will ensure that these learning outcomes, and the document has been published, 1,040 pages document. Incidentally, I was involved in architecturing that document. So if all of us look at that document and we look at the learning outcomes, they need to be achieved by and attained by all the children. Only then we can move on to the skills and the competencies. So when we talk about these subjects, very fortunately, the new education policy says, do not have streams. Do not say, this is a science stream, this is a humanities stream, this is a commerce stream, because every subject is able to get you to a career that you want to pursue in your life. So the streams are not as important as the individual subjects are. I want to do history, but I also want to learn physics. I want to do engineering, but then I don't want to do two sciences and mathematics. Probably I want to do accounts and entrepreneurship and maybe one chemistry, and I will still be able to do the chemistry. So this upward linkage between the universities and the high schools is what the new education policy is doing. So the colleges are going to give importance, higher education is going to give importance to subjects like entrepreneurship, business studies, to accounts, to liberal arts, to performing arts, to visual arts. So the children will be able to, like in other boards like IB, you don't need to take two sciences. You can take just one science. You can take mathematics. You can take different levels. The children go to study in universities abroad. They don't need two sciences and one mathematics. They need one science and one mathematics. So a similar thing is going to come here too. So for children, it becomes important to look at the interdisciplinary approach, to understand that there are no silos in life. If you are, as an engineer, going to create products, who are you going to create for? Yes, Mr. Gandhi was saying about the data. It's very, very important. So for students, it's very important to know and crack your data. If you're going to create a product, then who is your client? Who's your customer? Do you know the psychology of that person? Are you able to aesthetically design in order to attract people towards it? So no silos, please. So if you want to bring in the performing arts, you want to bring in the liberal arts, you want to bring in aesthetics, you want to bring in psychology, you want to bring in sciences, the child should have a holistic view. Only then competency-based education is possible. Only then relation to the real life situation and solutions to the real life problems will be possible. How do we do it in our schools? All my children play for an hour in the morning. My school is not a 6-hour school, it is a 7-hour school. Morning, I employ the coaches. They come, they coach the children and they go away. I've run a school with 6,000 children. I'm running a school with about 500 children now. DPS Cyberabad is a small school right now. But then all children play for an hour in the morning. We've divided the children in such a way that there are only 50 children with one particular coach. They all get to play in the morning, and once they are healthy and fit in the morning, they don't want to bunk the classes later on, and they don't run towards the fields because they've had a quota of running in the morning and playing in the morning. Similarly, art integration. So there is a full program which is there in the visual arts and the performing arts and the life skills and the leadership qualities and the personality development. All children have to go through this program. So every child has to pick up a sport, has to pick up an instrument, or has to pick up a form of art. So that is what the new education policy is demanding of the schools, a small school or a big school. Every school can do it, and teachers have to come forward. You remember we used to fill up the forms as to what are your talents or what were you good at when you were younger yourself. So what work can you do? Forever we've taken classes on of SUPW, of work experience. We've taught art, home economics, cooking, I mean financial literacy. There are so many things that we can bring here, and again, no silence. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jyoti ma'am. It was lovely listening to you, and you kind of so beautifully connected your response to the questions I posed, and I'm sure the audience here would will be deeply satisfied in getting to know how to implement it in their school, and how not to look at in silos. So my biggest takeaway in all of this is not to use the word extra or co. That's like now onwards, I'll be like sports in education, arts in education, life skills in education, in curriculum. So that's one. And not to focus on marks just, and offer interdisciplinary approach to our children. And the biggest don't that you had to share with the audience was no silos whatsoever. So thank you once again, Jyoti ma'am. I move on to our next panelist, Mr. Sanjay Datta, Principal, Maharana Mewar Public School. Good afternoon, sir. So this question, it came my way since I asked my friends to put in what is it that I should ask my super specialist panelist, and this was one common question that came in from a lot of principal friends. So just a little prelude. Under the holistic report card plan, students would be assessed on aspects like participation in sports in curriculum, life skills in curriculum, arts in curriculum, inter-school competitions, project-based learning, activity-based learning, or classroom interactions. So all these will be very closely monitored. So which parameters would you suggest schools should keep in mind with their day-to-day teaching learning transactions? Because if they do it in the day-to-day teaching learning transactions, only then they'll be able to truly give you the right mark, or the right, when I say mark, it is the benchmark that I'm talking about on what is expected, what was the objective, and what should be the outcome. What should be kept in mind while redesigning the lesson plans so that the daily transactions actually correspond to the outcomes? And eventually it boils down to the report card format. So I want to know, what do you suggest to the audience that they keep in mind while redesigning their lesson plans for daily transactions and their report cards? And what should be the student assessment guideline be like now onwards? Sanjay sir.
Thank you, Supriti ma'am, for posing that long and heavily academized question. Gaurav will vouch that I'm absolutely the wrong guy to ask that.
Oh, and I kind of thought you would be absolutely the right one when I created looking at your profile this question.
We both come from the wild, wild west of this country.
Okay.
Spending more time out of the classes rather than inside. But then I think I will give you an outsider's view of things.
That will be lovely. Yes.
Just to set the context, if you look at the documents that we have available to base this mark sheet, as you call it, I mean, the first one that I have with me is a circular dated 21/3/2017. Okay, I will read from that. You will have to allow me 2 minutes on that.
Sure.
There is a 19 version of it, and then the NEP 2020. But before I do that bit, I would take us back to 2010, that when we, in the middle of an academic session, we were asked to switch to CCE. Now that's something that we have all stopped talking about because probably it had to be rolled back. But this was something that was part of that program. If you look at the rubrics that were there, and I had an opportunity to also look at the rubrics from which I thought these were very heavily drawn back then, the SUNY, the New York University, which came out with, how to assess a child on parameters other than academics. And that is perhaps, that was the first time we were looking at children and saying, well, discipline, B, behavior towards school, A. And I said, what's this happening? I mean, what are we assessing them on? What are the parameters? And then there were training after training where, the teachers were being equipped, helter-skelter, you run, and you come out saying with a report card that this student has got A on discipline, B on its value of respect towards elders, and so on and so forth. So that is one mark card that is imprinted on my mind till today. We took a long time absorbing that. The circular of 2017 says uniform system of assessment, examination, and report card for classes 6 to 9. And it defines co-scholastic activities for the holistic development of students, co-curricular activities in following areas to be carried out. The aspect of regularity, sincere participation, output, teamwork to be the generic criteria. And it goes on to say the following scholastic activities: work, education, art, and health. And then it goes to discipline, where they say the students will also be assessed for the discipline, which would be based on factors like attendance, sincerity, behavior, values, tidiness, respectfulness for rules and regulations, attitude towards society. Nation and others, grading on discipline will be done term-wise. I will stop at this because I have been in this event since 11 a.m. as Gaurav asked me to. And I was listening to Dr. Madhav Dev Saraswat answer one of the teachers, I assume teacher or principal from Jaipur, as to how would you find the value systems different between a boarding and a day school. And she said that I see boarders roam around on liberty, on the day of liberty, as we called it when we were in school, and they were sure that they will not run away. So those students are pretty disciplined. Day school children cannot be trusted by that. Now, I was surprised where that comes from. And then I heard the answer from Dr. Saraswat, which is in line with what I was going to talk about today when I was talking about values, that he visited a school in Germany where kids were cleaning the tables. Now, there had been a WhatsApp flying around saying that the Japanese football team, after the match, had cleaned up the dressing room. And we were all surprised in our country. That's why I think we made a mention of it. Because had it been a value which was ingrained in our own system, we would have probably not taken notice of it. So my first answer to when the, we already have somebody on the panel who has been part of this policy and framework and everything, is to look at what are universal values and try and define them very clearly, and also the expectations to our students. Because unfortunately, our system of assessment, and this is again something from a previous conversation today, where one of the participants said that kindly change this word, give us a better word for assessment. So I'm drawing upon all that and bringing it all together, because when you sit down to make this mark sheet, it will A, have to be universal, B, it will have to draw upon a lot of native stuff. And I'm using the word native for a reason, because I have in my possession a book published in 1905, which exactly says how a native should be behaving while in the presence of a Brit. Now, please understand that these values, timeless values that we talk about, they all are defined only for the period of assessment. When you have a kid in school, you are assessing for 2 unit tests, one this test, one that test, and that's the assessment of the kid. Any other time you assess them a little less on, let's say, how respectable they are towards the teachers. I think that question we face every day, every year rather, when you select your students' council. There is a huge fight that, why was I not made the head boy or head girl? Then you are very hesitant saying that we know what you do in front of us, but we also know what you do behind us. So are we defining to kids that we are observing you all the time? Do we let them know what their behavior should be like? And do we let them know that we are assessing you even in your lunch break? So my suggestion would be your do's and don'ts, you put it very black and white, that kindly align your assessment parameters with the learning outcomes, which in turn should be with your competency-based learning. So your CBLs and your LOs have to align with the mark card that you are preparing. In a country like India, where a kid is brought paraded in front of parents saying that my kid is just an 11-year-old, but he can move the vehicle around, I think we are not very clear about our value systems. A student breaking law, driving a car at that age, is paraded as someone who is brilliant. A student coming to school on a two-wheeler or a motorcycle while he's underaged is another pointer to the same. So we will have to sit down and say that, look, we believe that there are a lot of possibilities in your behavior with your own justifications, but this is a set of rules that each school believes in. Draw on your ethnic background, because a form of behavior which is acceptable in one part of the country is not. So we will have to together come out with some universal values, discipline, whatever you may want to keep it. But after having a debate on that, I think we should come out on what is identified as universally accepted forms of behavior, values, ethics, and let the students maintain a diary of what they're saying. Let them substantiate it. Like you have the Boy Scout movement, you have the NSS in senior level. I have given so many hours of service. All right, what kind of service you did? I mean, right now in our school, we have the COVID diaries where kids are filming what they are doing and they're posting it. Let them. So there is an evidence-based learning which is happening. So I would say that our only don't should be to keep it ambiguous, and our only do should be to first arrive at a consensus on what are the parameters on which we are going to judge you, and then make it known to all. Their values should be known. It's like the SSB, when you go for your selection to the Army Selection Board, I mean, they know that you are being observed. And if you don't make it, you go back and ask the GTOs, you ask them, so what did I do wrong? Why was I not selected? I thought I had all the OLQs. And then he would say, no, son, when you thought people were not observing you, you were being observed. So I think, and I mean, again, I'll just digress a bit because I could not stop commenting on that. The conversation between Ma'am Jyoti Gupta and you about the silos and science, arts and all these, and having art in every subject and having sports as a basis. I mean, it is a value. When you say that students should play, apart from the health benefits, it is a value system which has grown on the play fields of some schools. And there are competition-based schools which just do not put any value tag on that. So again, we will have to do that. And this question, which was, talking about 11th, where she says, come class 11. I was asked this question by a tough interviewer, Mr. Chetan Bhagat, and it's there on the YouTube. And he said that, Mr. Datta, very good that you say you don't have silos. All your students do art, music, because we actually have 100 students go and perform every year. And he said that, but come class 11th, and where do they go? They go to coaching. And I said, no, we also allow, because we are based out of Udaipur. And we have a lot of people who come from, for all kinds of events and some big fat Indian weddings. So our kids are a little more exposed. So I said, well, we are exposed to different mediums. And he said, what can you substantiate it? And that is where I come to evidence-based things. And I said, well, I'm in good luck today. This very set on which we are holding this interview has 3 of my ex-students, 2 as a trainee, 1 as an employee. So we should be able to back all this up. If I say my school does it, I should be able to demonstrate it. And my results should speak for it. My students should speak for it. And it goes a long way, because when you were saying that, they be observed, I would say what Sting sang, every breath you take, every move you make, I'll be watching you. Mr. Roshan Gandhi would remember our last conversation in Goa. I think from Dire Straits, we have moved to Sting today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sanjay Datta. It was lovely hearing just the word OLQ and every breath you take, every move you make, because it just added more zing to the entire conversation. Yes, Mr. Roshan, you wanted to add something.
So sorry to interrupt. No, I just
Not at all.
wanted to
Not at all.
apologize. I have a hard stop, so I'll be dropping off now.
All right. All right.
Thank you very, very much to you, to Gaurav.
It was lovely talking to you.
And
Lovely
Sanjay, we'll
talking to you,
catch up
Mr.
on the Sting next time.
Oh, yeah, we do. But take care.
Great. Coming back to summing it all up, as I said, it was lovely hearing those words. It actually added a little zing to our entire conversation, and those who kind of can relate to it would have felt that wow factor in the beautiful conversation that you shared with us. My main takeaway, and what I've noted in my little notepad that I keep with me, is that universal behavior, values, and ethics is something that all schools should keep in mind while designing their lesson plans, their daily teaching learning transactions, and the report cards, along with competency-based learning aligned with the learning outcomes. So that's my key takeaway from your conversation. Thank you so much, Mr. Datta, once again. We are running, and I've actually passed my time, but I'll quickly go to our last panelist, Mr. Gautam Rajgaria, Pro Vice Chairman, DPS Varanasi, Nashik and Lava Nagpur, India. Good afternoon, sir. I think it's a question that almost all the panelists have touched upon in their responses, in their conversations throughout the past 1 hour. I'll be again asking you the same question, but probably I'll need a little more insight from your experiences. So in school education, the policy envisages a sweeping structural redesign of curriculum. And in order to deliver this curriculum, in order to achieve this humongous expectation that it has from us, we need teachers who are trained in pedagogical needs and understand them fully well. So what are some sustainable ideas in teacher training for improving teaching learning process at all levels of school? I've deliberately used the word sustainable because, as Mr. Roshan initially said, that not one odd workshop or a one odd resource person dropping in and actually training the teacher helps. What helps is a consistent and a continuous teacher professional development, teacher training. So that's why the word sustainable. Can you give us some sustainable ideas of developing teacher training plans for improving teaching learning process at all levels of the school? How should schools support their teachers in developing self-learning or kind of upgrading themselves in this journey? Mr. Gautam.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Supriti ji. I will try and answer this question as shortly as possible. I understand we are running out of time.
No, please take your time. I wouldn't rush you off. So we're really keen on listening.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll cut short my dialogues.
Thank you, Gaurav and Team IPN for curating this event. Extremely excited to be amongst you all today. And Gaurav, as always, you managed to get this amazing lineup of speakers. We have a mutual admiration club, and I've been listening to the fellow speakers here, and it's really a pleasure. We have all agreed on one thing, which is amazing, is that the NEP has come in as a blessing, and it promises to be a game changer in times to come if it is implemented well. Supriti ji, that is a very, very pertinent question, and let me try and answer that in 3 parts. So I'm going to try and answer that. Why is teacher training so important? What have been the challenges so far? Secondly, how do we train teachers to improve teaching learning at all school levels? And thirdly, what will be the role of the school leaders and policymakers to ensure that sustainability in teacher training is maintained? I understand that sustainability is such an important point, and as Roshan rightly said, getting one-off external trainer and the entire training drops out. So I'll talk more about it as we move forward. We all know, and we've all seen, that in any profession, keeping oneself up to date with the latest happenings in that industry is of tremendous value. Now, most industries we've seen have a full-fledged training or continuous professional development program that they run on the job. And there are training hours that they have planned for their resources. But something like that has not existed in education or in teacher training so far. Now, there has been, in fact, before the NEP came in, training for teachers was done mainly by private institutions, and they were done in silos. They were done as individual small units. They were expensive, and they were done one time with an external trainer coming in. The challenges that a lot of people have talked about have been three. One being time management. The teachers are always hard pressed with time, with managing their daily chores, classroom management, homeworks and assignments, and assessments. So there's no time really for the teachers when it comes to devoting it for training and development. Secondly, schools look at training as an expense, and they feel that training is extremely expensive and it is time taking. Thirdly, there is lack of good resource available, and logistics and cost associated with it is a huge challenge. These are the challenges that have been there so far, but now with technology in the hands of everybody, it solves those issues. One can easily engage into professional development at your own pace and at your own time. We have seen how professional development can be done sitting in India, watching listening to a podcast, or watching a video series by a professor in a foreign university. Training really has become something which is extremely accessible and easy and not expensive with the use of technology. Now, the second question is, how do we train teachers? The biggest mistake that most schools and school leaders do is that they bring in teacher training one size fit all model, and they kind of force it onto the team. Every teacher, like every student, has a different learning need. The first step is to identify the gap. Where do I need my training to be? So you will have to do a lot of classroom observations. There'll have to be a lot of feedback mechanisms. There'll be a lot of discussions, and you will have to bring the teacher on board as an important stakeholder in deciding what kind of trainings are required. The second mistake that the schools do is of being not flexible with the training hours and with the pace. So what Roshan rightly said, and I agree, that usually they would bring in an external resource, allocate a certain number of hours for that training, and then once the training is done, the external resource is gone. Now, whatever challenges are faced by the teachers are the problem of hers. I mean, there is nobody there to help her out. So it's very important to identify a resource who can be available through the training program. So it has to be an ongoing activity. It can't be considered as a one-off sprint. It is more like a marathon. You know, you have to keep it going. It has to be ongoing. And the third thing is that once the training is done, there has to be review and feedback again. So the cycle has to be measurable. Whatever we have learned, it needs to be effective and measurable. So the review mechanism has to be there in place. Now, to answer the third question, how do we make it sustainable? What is the role of the school leader, of the policy maker to make it sustainable? For anything to last, for anything to become organic, or for anything to continue to be existing, it has to be effortless. So what I follow in my schools is the 80-20 model, wherein I would do 80% of the trainings in-house. So we all know that every school has immense potential in their own resources. So tap into the internal potential of our teachers. In every school, you will have these set of people who have something to offer to their fellow colleagues, whether it is good assessment questions, whether it is classroom management, whether it is an academic input. There will be a certain set of teachers who would have something to offer to their colleagues. So tap into that. Now, these kind of trainings are the most authentic and sustainable, because when you bring in an external resource, what happens is that the external resource does not know the environmental challenges, the ecosystem challenges that the teacher faces in your particular school or the organization. While when you have an internal trainer, they kind of cover up all those challenges because they have been within the system. They know exactly what the problem is, what my parent body is like, what my students are like. So they are able to give a very authentic training on that particular topic. And it creates, most importantly, it creates a culture of learning within the school community. What we have seen is that it changes the staff room discussions from problems to solutions. Everybody is talking about how are they going to solve this problem rather than talk about the problems alone. What the school leaders also need to do is they need to incentivize professional development. Now, when I say incentivize, I don't mean you give a monetary incentive. We have an amazing credit point system. So in the credit point system, the teachers are required to fulfill a certain number of hours of training. We provide them with many hours of training. They can choose from any of them. These are flexible hours which are available. We get external resources also, but mainly it is done by our teachers on a Saturday in the evening hours. These are recorded sessions, so you can log in, tap into this anytime that you want when you are free. So it kind of gives you that flexibility that, okay, let me do these trainings when I am free. Lastly, the most important thing is recognition. So when you see a teacher who's putting in that right kind of effort for self-development, give them the due recognition there. The recognition is such an important thing, and it is an amazing motivational tool. Lastly, I would say that we create a culture of learning in the school system wherein everybody from the school leader to the admin to the teachers and even our Didi Bhaiyas are learning something new. We make it a point to kind of impart some kind of training. While the pandemic was going on, we were kind of educating our Didis and Bhaiyas on sanitation, better hygiene, better, what to eat, how do you ensure you're healthy. So the idea is to create a culture wherein you say, oh, I don't know this, to saying, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know this yet, but I can always learn. So that's my message there, Supriti, that reading, learning, and growing every day is so important, and NEP is bang on with that, with getting recognition to teacher development and training.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gautam. That was beautifully explained and presented. So I'll quickly share my takeaway, which I generally say it aloud so that it helps the audience as well, because sometimes you get so flowed in the entire conversation that you kind of actually forget to make note of it. So use of technology that you said, I really like the idea of curating, how I take it as curating the podcast or the video series. If I may add, I'm a great, I really enjoy listening to TED Talks. So I actually curate them, pin them, and whenever I'm working on chores at home or commuting, I listen to them a lot. So that's I would share it with our audience. This is something you can curate a bank of these podcasts, video series, and TED Talks, and make them part of teaching, teacher training programs. Creating a culture of community learning within the system, within the ecosystem of the school. That was a beautiful key takeaway for me, and I'm sure for the audience. And another very interesting point that you shared was the recorded session. I think that's something that I am going to start immediately, because that's something I have not done it in my school, because I think it'll save us a lot of time, and it'll create our own bank of beautiful sessions that one can access and do it in their flexible timings. So that's a beautiful takeaway from me. And the don'ts that you mentioned were the don't was that do not make the trainings extremely non-flexible, that it becomes difficult for the teacher to take it up. And do not forget to review feedback and make sure it is measurable. Thank you so much once again, Mr. Gautam. It was a pleasure listening to you.
One point,
yes, please.
Sorry, the don't would be for the management and the school leaders is, don't bring in a training just because you need to fill in those hours of training. It's
absolutely.
Your teachers are part of your decision-making process in this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Gautam. I think I would skip my last point because that was more to summarize the entire panel. And I think we've already encroached upon the last panel's time, and I don't want to do that. anymore. I'm sure our audience would have been enriched with the sharing that happened in the past 1 hour. I thank you so much once again, and I thank the IPN team and Mr. Gaurav for having me given this privilege and the luxury, if I may say, to be part of this amazing specialist here today. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great afternoon. Over to you, Mr. Gaurav.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Rupati. I could see we have a session with Dr. Swati Popat. She's already with us. So I'll take that liberty of buying a 5 minutes from her, Dr. Swati, which is that I'll take 5 minutes from yours session and I'll give it to Suprati so that we can open up the house for Q&A, because that's very integral to any discussion which we do at IPN. So thank you, Dr. Swati, if you're being magnanimous enough. Thank you very much. We'll take a few questions, ladies and gentlemen. If you have one or an observation to share, please put up a virtual show of hand. We'll help you, which is, I'm sure we are now well equipped how to do this. But still, if you have anything to share, please do that. And we'll help you ask you that question, okay? Yeah, or an observation, perfectly okay. Anything to do with NEP, and doesn't mean that it should come from the panel discussion. If you have anything which is substantive enough you feel you want to add, please do that.
Gaurav, can I add on to what, the topic which was given to me about NEP was, what I also feel that, we may include the languages, other languages in the curriculum, but it's not really necessary that we have to test everything, every language. So a regular recapitulation is actually sufficient enough to ensure that the child is learning that language. See, basically, parents have a problem and teachers have a problem when we assess the child, when we have examination per se for 3 languages. So that's where I feel, if till the primary level, if we can have a regular kind of, recapitulation activities, where you can understand where the child stands, I think that will be helpful in convincing the parents to start 3 languages.
Okay. So if we do not have any observation, okay, Devrata. Yeah, Devrata. Yeah, Devrata, please go ahead.
Namaskar, sir.
Namaskar.
Jai Hind, everyone.
Jai Hind.
Jai Hind, ma'am. Just my observation, sir. I listened the entire discussion. The discussion was very pertinent. So in this one, I would like to add, actually, sir, the life is relative. Whatever we speak out, everything is relative. In NEP also, every sentence, every word is relative, as because we are from a diverse country. So everything is important, like skill education, like our activity-based education, competency-based education. And what I sincerely feel after going through NEP, that the people who want to change the world, the people want to contribute really, that NEP gives us a lot of scope. And I also feel that gradually the entire world, especially the education, is going towards integrated education, towards as like Maharishi Aurobindo says, integrated education, or Maharishi Mahesh Yogi says, consciousness-based education, or in our ancient times, spiritual education, life education. And our esteemed panelist also mentioned about the universal values. So that means the purpose of education is to become, as Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan used to say, the purpose of education is salvation. Purpose of education is liberation, which is attained only by serving the country, serving the nation, serving the planet selflessly by doing Nishkam Karma. So within this NEP, we are having all the opportunities and keeping also mind that everything is relative. Because like, for example, I am working in Uttarakhand. So here the mother tongue is Garhwali. Garhwali also has many dialects, as Pratima Ma'am also has mentioned. So utilizing everything, implementing everything, we have to be very flexible also. And this NEP implementation will take a lot of time also, gradually. We cannot become very hard that yes, government has told that we have to do it. Everything has its own importance and its own flow. Thank you so much for the panel. I noted down most of the very beautiful points which I have also enriched myself, and everyone has been excellent. Thank you, Supriti ma'am, Gaurav sir.
Thank you so much. Namaskar.
I'll just add one thing. Can I?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Mr. Devrat, what you pointed out that it is a very vast document. You have to understand that not everything might come into implementation straight away. There are timelines 2035 and all, but they are very good pointers. So it is a document which encompasses all kind of thoughts. Now, what you can do at your own level, I think we should all draw some kind of validation from this document and go ahead with it and not exactly wait for some kind of a directive to come. So you can innovate. You can always, as I said, the universal values are universal, but then have local inputs, use them, and make your own cards out of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sanjay.
We'll take up quickly, Supriti, one more observation or question from Lakshmi Kumar. Monica ji, we'll take it a little later. Yeah. Lakshmi ji.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's more like a comment on the overall educational ecosystems and accountability for all reforms. We have seen that, when SCCE came, we all got excited because, we kind of forecasted some kind of a change in scenario, and that many of us who really wanted another kind of assessment and overall learning assessment for learning and assessment of learning just walked in. And then in the implementation, we very, very quickly lost the idea of, authenticity, that it became an unreliable tool when it came to a final, the overall Indian diverse scenario of the school systems. Is there a concern about the NEP too, that by the time we cross halfway through, and again, not having the uniform buying in and implementation, that we will lose the plot? Because, just to give you one very quick example, right now when grade 12 scores are getting, assimilated and tabulated, I hear a lot of school leaders talking about lack of integrity and authenticity in compiling the scores. So would our, next generation would lose out on, because as a school system, we don't enroll holistically and universally? It's a question and an observation.
Thank you, Lakshmi ji. Thank you very much. In fact, thank you, Supriti. Thank you to each and every panelist who was part of it. And I personally would like to commend Supriti being a fabulous moderator. And because if the moderator is good, the panel automatically looks good, if I may say, because you bring the best out of the moderation. Thank you very much. And this is not I am saying, these are the people who are sharing with me the comment and observation. So thank you very much for doing this. Thank you, Sanjay ji. Thank you, Gautam. Thank you, Roshan, who I believe is moved out, Ms. Pratima ji and Jyoti Gupta ji. Thank you very much, each one of you. And I obviously request all of you to stick around. We now go to the final two part of today's dialogue with us, which is, we first have Dr. Swati Popat. I personally believe that she needs no introduction. However, I would like to quickly talk about what her topic or deliberation will be all about, because we want to get a sense of what the entire primary education system in India is looking like as of now. She obviously is a very, very visible face from the Indian education system context, but I'm having her for the first time on IPN. So glad to have you at IPN, ma'am, to be with us. And she also needs to be in another discussion at 4:15. So I won't really budge into the time more, but having said this, welcome Dr. Swati Popat. Sorry about that. She's the president of Early Childhood Association in India, a very distinguished education leader of the country. Welcome, Dr. Popat.
Thank you so much, Gaurav. And I must congratulate IPN for curating this wonderful two-day program. And I'm sure principals, educators are all going to benefit from these really, really robust discussions which are happening, because bringing together educators on a platform and talking about relevant points, I think is what makes you stand apart when it comes to conferences. So congratulations. Thank you for giving me this topic about the changing world, because the world has really changed because of this pandemic. I think we were very, very, overnight thrust into virtual learning. And it is such a sad thing that before the pandemic, we used to think of technology as a monster. We used to think of technology as something that we need to keep children, especially the younger ones, away from technology. And from March 2020, children have had nothing but technology to help them bridge that learning gap which has happened because of schools being closed, especially so in India. And we are now into the second academic year where we are virtually teaching children. And I don't see this going away, at least till this October. And even after that, the way this virus is mutating, I see more of hybrid learning happening, where schools may stay open for some time, but virtual learning will not just disappear overnight. And I think that is something that we have to bring our heads across, that this is not something just for now. It is something that we will have to adjust to post-pandemic too. And these are some of the points that I want to discuss with school leaders, which I feel we need to keep in mind. I would also urge school leaders that Early Childhood Association also has a Association for Primary Education and Research, because now the NEP has come out with a new stage called foundational stage, which means 3 years of early years and 2 years of primary. So it is very, very important that primary and pre-primary teachers are trained together and understand how children develop, how children learn, so as to ensure that whether we are teaching virtually or we are teaching with the blended format or we are back to physical school, we keep in mind that our focus as per the national education policy should be on how to learn and not what to learn. Because I think for a long time, our schools have focused on what to learn. I still see a lot of schools being very proud that their children can count up to 1,000 or can count up to 5,000. And I always have to explain to them that that's recitation of numbers. That doesn't count at all. Numeracy is all about understanding numbers, and numeracy is all about a child being able to understand number concepts, and that is where we need to move now. So I have around 7 points that I would like to talk to the school leaders about, which we need to keep in mind post-pandemic when schools do open. Number one, as I said, is blended learning. We must ensure that we don't just go back to the chalk talk method or the sage on the stage kind of a concept. We need to understand that children were quite empowered about learning during virtual learning because there were a lot of things they had to do on their own. They had the power now on the mute button or on the video button, which is a power that they don't have in the classroom. They can't just get up and walk away. So it is very important that this power that virtual learning gave them, they are going to behave differently in the classrooms. They are going to show you when they are bored. They are going to show you when they are not interested. And this may look like misbehavior, but it's nothing but something that the virtual learning taught them, that technology gave them that power. So it is very important for us to have classroom agreements, that what are the do's and don'ts of classrooms. Even now, I tell schools to do it for virtual learning because it is very important that, rather than grumbling that the children are not behaving, children are not listening, it is important that children know it. I think we focus very less on the why. I think even now when we run virtual classrooms, we are very clear about what we are going to teach, how we are going to teach, but we are not clear about the why. And I think it is the why that parents are seeking from us. Many parents, especially in the young children, pre-primary, primary to a large extent, are not convinced about virtual learning. They say, my child doesn't sit, my child doesn't like. And we have to explain to them why virtual learning and how is it going to benefit their child. Because till you don't make people understand the why, the what and how are useless. And it is also very important to understand that as we become adults, we are more left brain oriented. And the left brain is where why comes from. So when you are talking to an adult or when you're talking to an older child, it is very important to keep in mind the why. Why shouldn't I mute myself? Why shouldn't I switch off my camera? The why becomes very important. We are only telling them rules. We're not telling them why. So I think it's important to equip ourselves with the why and teach our teachers. Since you all were talking in the previous session about teacher training, I think brain development and neuroscience is something that teachers are never trained on. We assume as if, teachers are teaching a curriculum. I'm sorry, teachers teach children. They don't teach the curriculum. And it is very important for teachers to understand children. And you can only do that if you have at least a basic foundational understanding of how children's brains function, how do they grow, and how they develop. Like, for example, the simplest thing that you can teach teachers in the early years is that the right brain develops first in children, and it is the right brain that thrives on songs, stories, and activities. And that's why it is better to teach left brain concepts like writing, mathematics, through right brain activities. Once this is clearly told to teachers and parents, they would understand why you are having play in your classroom and not going straight to books. Also very important is for parents and teachers to understand that there is something called a lower brain and a higher brain. Now, the lower brain is your emotional brain, and your higher brain is where your thinking, your learning, your memory, etc. happens. But it's the lower brain who can control your higher brain. So emotions are part of your lower brain. Now, if you don't help children take care of their emotions, their anxiety, their stress, they are never going to be able to focus or pay attention in the classroom. And this is good for both virtual and physical classrooms. We need to understand that children now are under immense stress and anxiety. They've been cooped up at home. They are seeing their parents anxious about salaries, school fees, people falling sick, people dying. So their minds are not right now geared up for learning. So when children come to virtual class, start with right brain learning, because it's the right brain that calms down the lower brain. So it is very, very important that if these simple things are kept in mind for teachers and parents to understand, we would not have a major hassle shifting from virtual to physical or physical to virtual. I feel neuroscience and brain development is something that we ignore in teacher training colleges. I think as a subject, it should be introduced in teacher training colleges for teachers to understand that the misbehavior or the challenging behavior that I see is something to do with the child's emotions. And if I can control that, the emotion, I will be able to have a child who listens, pays attention, learns. It's also very important to understand that it's your right brain that is in charge of long-term memory. So if you want something to remember, if you want children to remember what you've taught for life, then it's high time you started using right brain techniques. And that's where we come to flipped learning. It is very, very important in virtual learning. We've realized that, teachers who showed PowerPoints or showed videos during virtual learning found the children disappearing from the screens, switching off their videos, etc. It is important that things that you want to show children, let them see it at their own time. Give that empowerment to children. I urge school principals also to read up on the work of Erik Erikson. And Erikson talks about autonomy. And autonomy is something that even Maria Montessori spoke about when she developed her program. It's something that Frederick Frobel talks about. So it is very important that we give autonomy to children, and that can only happen if we bring in the concept of flipped learning, where the discussions, the deliberations, the question answers happen in the classroom. But when you want to show them a video or a PowerPoint, let them see it at their own time, in their own way. So that if you bring in even the basic level of flipped learning, it will help you now and it will help you post-pandemic also. It is also very, very important to understand that safety is going to become a huge issue once we reopen. And nobody knows actually what keeps us safe from COVID-19. So everybody is going to be like a blind person in a dark room, blindfolded and shooting away in the dark when it comes to safety. Don't overdo things, because the children, when they come back to physical schools, are going to come back very anxious, because their parents are already anxious and stressed about sending their child to a physical school. They're afraid about the child getting the virus, etc. So it is very important to have orientations both with children and parents, help them understand what are the safety measures and what can and what will happen. I have noticed sometimes, especially with these very young children, we punish the child for an adult's problem, like coming to school on time. It's not something in the hands of these little children. It is a parent's fault. Not wearing a mask and coming. It's not the child's fault. It is the parent's fault. So it is very, very important to have clear rules and regulations for the parents and not punish the children. They're already going through stress and crisis. Don't add to the burden, you know. I think if there's one thing this pandemic has taught us, is that schools should not sell commodities. Schools should sell curriculum and teacher quality. Because you know, during when the schools closed, parents said, we are not using your whiteboard, we are not using your swimming pool, we are not using this, why should we pay? And that is where I urge schools that when we reopen, let's change the way we market our schools. Because I always wince when somebody calls it an industry, you know, because we are not an industry, we're not a factory. We are an educational institution, we call it an educational sector. But when we talk about it as an industry, we are suddenly trying to use marketing techniques that suit the industry and not education. So it is very, very important that when we reopen, you will be tempted to sell your safety standards and blow them out of proportion. Don't do that, because the best of safety measures will also always let you down. So don't tempt parents with that. Convince parents with the right things, and please be mentally ready. Please keep your staff mentally ready that there will be issues. We have a school in UAE, and we have opened and closed it in the past 1 year. Even though we are functioning in bubbles, we have had children falling sick, we've had teachers falling sick. So you cannot have a foolproof that no, nothing will happen in my school. It will happen, because children go back home. Children use transport. So there are so many different places from which a child can come infected back into your school. As you are aware, even the tests are not picking up the latest variants, the latest mutations. So don't go overboard on trying to say that, yes, mine is a safe school and nothing will happen here. And then when it happens, we have that typical mentality of hiding it from parents. Please understand that don't be afraid of the press. I always tell schools that if something has happened in your school, be the first one to inform the press about it, because that displays you as a school leader, as an educational leader, rather than the press coming and hounding you and then finding out the truth. It doesn't work like that. It's always ready to have your press statement ready, because somehow I think schools have become the fodder for the press. You know, you get these lovely headlines, ke itne sare school mein ye hua, wo hua. Let's not fall prey to that, you know. So please be open, because if a child gets infected in your school, please understand this infection is not a joke. It can infect everybody. So don't try to hide. Keep parents, a transparent relationship with parents is what is going to help schools. It's also very important for us to understand technology. Technology is not a monster, but it's monstrous the way it is sometimes used. We sometimes feel that we can leave children and technology alone. Or we think if we have technology, the teacher is not needed. It's nothing like that. A teacher will always be needed, and technology has its own place. It's like a tool. Just like you had a blackboard as a tool, or then you had a whiteboard as a tool, technology is a tool. It can never, ever replace a teacher. So I think it is very important that you train teachers to understand the best use of technology. Technology is not something that is only apps. I have noticed that in virtual learning, sometimes only apps have been used, and children have been told to do things on apps. Many schools have not done things like, you have an app on Google called Google Arts and Culture. Go on that app. It's a fantastic app. It exposes children to different paintings, different artists from around the world. And then you can take your own selfie, and the app finds out any paintings that look like your selfie. And then you can start a discussion from that with your children. So it is so important that you use technology as part of your teaching learning process, and not just, as a helper. Technology is not a helper. The Mumbai Chhatrapati Shivaji Museum has started virtual tours of its museum, and they do it through stories. And you can go on our Facebook page of Early Childhood Association. Every month we have this virtual program with the museum for early years and primary years children. So it is very important that just because we have shifted to virtual learning or back to physical learning, it doesn't mean that we treat these things as co-curricular activities. I hate that term, co-curricular activities. I mean, why is art, dance, and sports a co-curricular activity? I think we have to get out of this Macaulay idea that marks and grades and scoring is education. I think we have to understand that education is life skills. And that is what NEP talks about, that we need to give children experiential learning. And experiential learning can happen only when you have the arts, the sports, everything also as part of your curriculum, and not as a co-curricular activity. Because when children come back to the physical school, they are already quite fatigued with learning, because too much of pressure of learning had been put on them by parents, by schools, etc. When they come back, they will need these co-curricular activities actually as the right brain activities to get them back into left brain learning. So it is very, very important that we focus on that. I see schools using multiple intelligences, STEAM, etc. Please understand that these are just vehicles for your curriculum. Vehicle cannot run without a road. So first you have to create the road for these vehicles. And the road is created by training your teachers, training them to understand why they are using multiple intelligences or why they are using STEAM education. Because I've noticed that these have just become publicity points. And when I see lesson plans framed on STEAM, I don't see the integration. It's important that teachers read up on Jerome Bruner, and his spiral curriculum. Spiral curriculum talks about not limiting children, because this I talk especially for the early years. In our country, there's a concept in the pre-primary that every month there will be one concept. So 1 month will be dedicated to insects. Then the other month will be dedicated to animals. Then the third month will be dedicated to something else. When you choose a spiral curriculum, you are doing multiple topics together based on your selection of the approach. When the child looks at the world, the child doesn't see only insects or only vehicles. The child sees everything together. So it is important that you don't limit the child's exposure and learning in the classroom to just these themes. think about how these themes are harming a child's holistic learning. That is very, very important. I can understand a week dedicated or a day dedicated, but a whole month talking every day only on insects, it gets boring for young children, because they are seeing so much else out there. And then when we finish the topic of insects, you don't even talk about it throughout the year. It's now that there are no insects in the world. So it is very, very important when you choose the spiral method, you are actually taking up that topic again and again throughout the year and throughout the other grades, but in an evolving higher manner. Because if you look at the spiral, it starts with a dot. And then as each spiral comes out, it becomes larger and wider. So it is very, very important that when we reopen, we shouldn't go back to what we were pre-pandemic. It is important that the learnings that we had in the pandemic, we are able to implement them in post-pandemic. Only then we would say that these 2 years that we have spent on virtual learning have been successful, because you can't expect these children now to come back to the pre-pandemic times. They are going to come back with a new idea of learning, a new way of learning. And most importantly, when physical school opens, I know our focus will be on safety, but our focus needs to be on socio-emotional skills. These children have not had the time to make new friends, to talk to their peer group, to share, to have those little discussions, fights, etc. They have lost the ability to understand social relations. They have lost the ability to understand impulse control, self-regulation. They have been alone. They have been monitored by parents all the time. So they don't know now how to behave with others when they are not being prodded by an adult. Our focus when schools open should be on socio-emotional learning. You are going to face challenging behavior in the classrooms when it comes to sharing. You're going to face a lot of issues when it comes to socio-emotional development. Please understand, it's not a challenge. It's not an issue. It's something that these children are experiencing after a very long time. And for many of them, it could be the first time that they are attending physical schools. Let's remember that. And for many of them, they are coming back after experiencing virtual and they're coming back to physical. So it is going to be a problem in our classrooms if teachers are not trained. But if teachers are trained to understand socio-emotional development, please, as I said, read up on Erik Erikson, because that tells you exactly what is the emotional support that you can give to children at each age stage. Very, very important to understand. Friends, physical school is something that we are all looking forward for, but none of us know when it will actually happen. Let us not only prepare for physical school. Let us focus on the virtual learning which is happening right now and try to ensure that we are doing a good job of that virtual learning. I know assessments have become like a thorn in our side right now. How do we do assessments and how do we ensure that when exams are not happening, how do we promote children, etc. I feel AI is a good use when it comes to assessment, because AI gives you that ability to not be partial. AI personalizes assessment, which means AI keeps in mind ZPD of Vygotsky. That means each child in your class is of a different age group. Please understand, you may say that I have 6-year-olds in my class, but each child is not 6-year-old. There is somebody who's 5 years, 8 months, and that's somebody who's 6 years, 3 months. And that difference does make a difference in the kind of activities and responses that they give. So when you have AI, you are able to personalize that assessment, and the AI is able to have the algorithm that will give them the activities based on what they were able to answer. So the level of difficulty increases as per the performance of the child. So it is very, very important that we keep in mind these things, because if we have had 2 years without exams, without assessment. And then suddenly they come back to physical school. And now we suddenly start with tests and exams and assessments. It's going to be a huge burden and stress on the children's lower brain. And definitely learning will suffer. So I urge you all that it is important for us to keep in mind that when we plan for physical school, plan for 4 things. Plan first for safety, of course. Plan second for parent partnership, answering the why. Plan third for teacher training. Very important that you ensure that teachers are ready mentally, physically, and academically, which means supported with the right curriculum, etc., pedagogically, I would say. And fourth is also preparing the children. We need to make them aware of what is in store for them in the physical classrooms, what are the expectations from them, so that they come knowing what to expect. If we do these 4 things, reopening physical schools is going to be a joy. After all, to teach is to touch a life forever. And I think we have been touching lives quite well during virtual learning. Let's keep touching them with pedagogy very well, even post-pandemic when physical schools open. Thank you so much. I hope the points have been of interest. I tried to keep it short and sweet because I know it's the end of the day, and most of us are Indians here and we have a sweet tooth. So keeping it short and sweet always helps. Thank you.
Fantastic. Not only is what sweet, it was so clear and precise, and I think I've been getting the responses on my WhatsApp that such a clarity of thought. Thank you very much, Dr. Popat. Absolutely fantastic deliberation, I must say. With that sort of a clarity we actually needed for this sector. So I open up the house for Q&A quickly. I'm sure Dr. Popat would love to answer your questions, or you have any clarification you want to seek. I believe their experience from the Middle East, one of their school outside of India, is a fabulous that they are witnessing something which is very real time. And I'm sure you as an institute will very soon witness that you will have to face a scenario wherein a student will catch up with this virus, and how will you react to that? That's a very, very practical aspect, I would say every school leader would love to know about, I think. Major Mohammed, you want to ask something? Go ahead.
Thank you, Gaurav bhai. And though it's not a query, normally I do not make a statement, I do not comment unless I have a query. But here the talk was so effective that I couldn't hold myself back but to compliment Dr. Swati for giving such an amazing talk. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Major. Thank you, Major. Anyone else with any question or observation, please do give us a virtual show of hands. So we'll help you unmute and then you can ask. Jayu Ganesh, yes, please, Jayu. I was expecting you to join in fact. Yeah, go ahead. You're not audible. Yeah. We still have good 5 odd minutes, so we can really ask questions. Please.
Extremely sorry. Thank you, Gaurav. Dr. Swati, that was just amazing, amazing. I didn't wink an eye, and I've been constantly making notes from what you've been saying. It was just pearls of wisdom. I would definitely like to get associated with you and learn more to help my teachers and my students. And your last final words were just, I would say, huge wisdom. And I have written it in box and highlighted that because we are all looking forward to reopening of schools, and we have all been planning so many things. Yes, similar things that you have told, but that 4 points that you've pinpointed has been extremely clear. Superb clarity of thought, and the delivery has been even more clear. Thank you so much. It was a wonderful session. Thank you, IPN. Thank you, Gaurav. Amazing.
Most welcome. Most welcome. I had seen few virtual show of hands. If you please want to come back and which is Miss Manju or yeah.
Namaskar. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Namaskar.
I resonate with the ideas
put forward by Dr. Popat, and I've been a great fan of her. And I really admire this with the way my observations are, with the simplicity she puts it, all the points forward are amazing. And what she said was that we have to find new ways in times to come. Not the old ways will work with the schools. So I would commend my commendation to you, Gaurav, and IPN team for making Dr. Swati Popat available to all of us. Thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Popat, for being such a wonderful speaker and always motivating everybody to do better day by day. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Ms. Kajal Marwa.
Yeah, good afternoon, actually good evening, Gaurav and Mrs. Swati. It's been really wonderful to listen to you. I really like the point where you did say that it is very important to maintain the transparency between the parent community and the school. And we should work fearlessly if something goes wrong from us. Taking it as a human factor, we should acknowledge it, go for the press printing. This is the wow pointer because this will make the system to work more effectively and transparently. Thank you so much for your solution.
Thank you.
Ma'am, I do not know your name. It is Director AMET. Please go ahead. You're not audible. You're not audible. Yeah, you're not audible. Would you mind if you can put that together and come back, please? Yeah, because is this anyone else able to hear her, or am I the only one who's not able to hear her? I think she has some problem.
No, son.
Then we have Sushila ji.
Yeah.
And on the iPhone, you'll have to change it to your name. It will be better. Yeah.
Yeah. Good evening, Gaurav, once again.
Good evening.
I really want to thank Dr. Swati. So much has come up, when it comes to KG and primary learning. And the observations are, ma'am, I'm really thankful to you. Probably I'll have to get in touch with you once again. And thanks to IPN for, introducing you to us. Hybrid learning, and also the teachers should not keep in mind that they're going to go back to the pre-pandemic situation and the culture. We need to change the culture. That's a very important point that I have also made notes. Quite a few points ma'am has told us about right brain and left brain and the top brain, so lower brain. I think ma'am, it was amazing, and there was quite a lot to learn from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Swati ji, a quick word of advice: you should start creating a fan club of yours so that you'll have more likes, I would say. It will do well, I'm sure. But having said this, Director ANET, if your audio is resolved, please go ahead.
Please, am I audible, please?
Yeah. Please go ahead.
Okay, I am Roshan Patel, and in this group, I think I'm fortunate because I know Swati ma'am personally. She's visited my school. Hi, Swati. And you know what? The whole point from morning we've been discussing, and she reiterated very beautifully why we shouldn't call co-curricular activities. Why are they experiential learning? So that has put a stamp on it, and now we know why. Thank you for answering the why, Swati ma'am, because we know that we shouldn't call it, but why, we know it today very well. Thank you so much. It was wonderful. Thank you, Gaurav.
Most welcome. Yeah, ma'am. On the iPhone, you'll have to unmute. I'm so sorry I have to call you iPhone purely because I don't know your name. But you're not audible. And you're not audible above everything else. Not audible.
That I happened to come here and hear this discussion. I mean, it has completely enriched us. And what Major Muhammad Ali Shah, he himself is a TEDx speaker, and that too an international one. I could hear him say how these things are going to really impact our lives. What really kind of hit the nail is what ma'am just said. When we go back to physical school, these are the parameters we should seriously look in. And I think this is such a beautiful thing that she said. This is a beautiful combination of being sensitive and practical and an idea that I think we can all incorporate. Thank you so much for making this happen, and I'm glad that I'm a part of it. Thank you so much.
Most welcome, ma'am. We'll take up one more, just time for one quick question, and I will request, because we have to get into our final session, our guest is already with us. I'll give it to Asma.
Hello, thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you so much, ma'am. I really loved your session, and especially the part, punishing the child because of adults' problem. That is something which I'm going to really, ask my teachers to go ahead and be very particular about that. Flipped learning is something that LHS is really focusing a lot on, and we have seen good results in that. So thank you so much, ma'am. And I really, really wish that I can have a long-term association with you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Gaurav.
I will urge Gaurav to give my WhatsApp number to anybody who wants, and you can get in touch with me.
Sure.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So Mathuraji, Hiraji, I will have to skip. We'll take up, and I'll pass on your number to Swati ji, and Swati ji is yours to get them. Please directly reach out to her. That's the way collaboration truly works, I believe. Thank you very much, Dr. Swati Popat, ma'am. Pleasure listening to you for the first time. Hope to see you soon. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.
Thank you, and bye-bye.
Take care. Okay, dear leaders, we get into the final conversation for today. I think session after session, we've been listening some amazing talks. I must compliment all my speakers. And obviously that is always our aim at IPN, to ensure that every moment what you spend with us is worth your time, if I may say. Thank you very much for all our previous speakers. Before we go to the final session of today, as I said, if you wish to grab a quick glass of water, drink it, because for the next 45 odd minutes, we'll have someone who I had a chance of speaking to yesterday, when we spoke to almost 1 hour. And I felt that even 1 hour was actually time which possibly was very, very less. For the valedictory message, or the final day one message for all of us here, and on a fantastic topic, the reason why schools needs to change in the face of artificial intelligence. I welcome Mr. Professor. I was asking him, what should I call you? Dr. Roy, Professor. So he said just Roy. But having said this, I welcome Professor Roy Anderson, who's a global educator, needs no introduction purely because his work of 3+ decades in the education industry has been phenomenal. Authored multiple books, which we will share with you. If you wish to possibly go and subscribe them or buy them, please do that. But having said this, I hand it over to you, Dr. Roy. We are all very keen to listen in for your deliberation today. Over to you.
Okay, can you hear me?
You're audible. Please go ahead.
Namaste, my friends. I was in India 3 years ago, and I have some very good friends there. I'm very honored to be invited to talk with you. If this audio signal drifts along, please tell me, and I'll go to a backup system. When this pandemic began last year, I honestly thought to myself, oh great, I can have a week's holiday. But a week went to a month, and it's not stopping. And waves come and go. And we are all at the time, as the previous speaker was pointing out, hoping to get back into education. The reality is we don't know when things will ever become normal again. We hope and we pray. And when they do open, when the virus goes down, we try to bring kids back in. When the virus comes up, we send the kids home or they don't come to school. The learning is being terribly disrupted. For children above the age of 15, it is very, very serious. The pandemic has made me realize, really, what's really happening in our society. To understand school, we have to see it in a very global and intense program. School, of course, is really the instrument of society. And society uses school fundamentally in order to produce the next citizen worker. So the origins of school was really just to take kids who were running around, laughing, playing, whatever, and teach them, discipline them to follow rules. Sit down, don't move unless you're told, do as you're told. Learn this, don't learn that. And so for a young child, they were formulated to follow rules because this is what society needs citizen workers to do, to follow rules. When the pandemic came and the children went into a home where they felt safe, they felt relatively detached from the teacher, they began to feel that they didn't need to follow these rules. They could invent their own. This caused them also to be disrespectful to the teacher and so the authority they represented. And we are now moving into a situation where an element of students don't follow the necessary self-discipline in behavior that we would expect of them when they're citizens. And also, of course, when they're deprived of competition in the learning environment and the presence of a physical teacher, so they don't have the drive to want to keep up with their studies. They fall behind. And this, of course, is a very serious problem on both sides. So basically what we need to do is to instill within our students a self-responsibility, to understand that it's only up to them. They can do whatever they want to do. The problem we've got is that we believe that children inherit a natural ability. And when we witness their effort in school, we judge the return we get as part of what they're able to do and part of what they put their effort into doing. What I'd like to talk to you about is why this is all wrong. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Roy Anderson. I come from the United Kingdom. When I was a child in school, I failed everything. I didn't understand at all what was going on. I was bullied, I was insecure. I didn't have the confidence to stop the teacher and say, I'm sorry, what is happening? And if I did, the teacher would give me a quick remark that I would say, yes, sir, I understood what I really did, because I was frightened of other children laughing at me because I didn't know what was going on. When I was 16, they said to me, Roy, you're not clever enough to do mathematics in your final examination. You must do arithmetic. 17, I took my examinations, English, arithmetic, history, geography, science, and I failed every single one. I got 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. After 12 years of school, I was illiterate. For me, I did different things. I got a job in a factory, and then I hitchhiked around Europe, and I joined the army. In the army, I was taught to realize that you just have to do something. You can't complain. You can't say, I don't feel like doing it or whatever. You just do it. And the better you do it and the faster you do it, the greater it's done. That was a great lesson for me. Well, I left the army and I wanted to travel around the world. I wanted to meet people of other cultures and experience life. And I had no money. The only way I could do that was to get a job on a ship. To get a job on a ship, I needed my school qualifications. So at 20 years of age, I went back to school. I made sure I was in the front desk. And if the teacher said something I didn't understand, I had the confidence then to interrupt them and to argue respectfully so that I really understood every single thing of every lesson. I'd keep that. I worked hard at night. Excuse me. At the end of the first year, I was the top student. Sorry. And after 3 years, my examinations were phenomenal. I was 92% in applied mathematics at A-level when I'd failed arithmetic very early on. In my 30s, I was struck with the idea that I didn't want any child to fail as I had done in school. I was fortunate I had a second chance. A lot of kids don't. They go straight into factory life or whatever it is. I wanted to find out, what do we do wrong? What is it that we are doing so that all children don't get top grades? Why? We try hard, we give our love, we give our dedication, but something's wrong. Well, I spent 10 years dedicated to understand the whole political social mechanism that uses school to create the next citizen work. And I've written books that are said by professors around the world to be some of the best books written about school, society, and learning. Just very briefly, my first book is called The Illusion of Education. It explains why we do not teach children how to think and how to learn in school. We process them on language skills. I'll come back to that in a moment. When I began this at 30 years of age, I went into different schools and I said to principals and teachers, why aren't all these kids doing better? And the general response was, well, they're born different. And I thought, well, When I was 17, they said I had a very low genetic count. When I was 24, they said I had a very high genetic count. So that didn't quite work out. So I spent many, many years understanding why we think intelligence is inherited. And I wrote the first book, which proves why intelligence is not genetically inherited. We'll come back to that again later. Therefore, if we don't inherit intelligence, where does it come from? And so I studied neurology, how the brain works. And by the way, I studied genetics. And I wrote the brain environment complex as a new understanding to what intelligence is. Basically, it just comes down to emotional security and sensitivity. I'll explain those in a moment. And so I wrote mediation to explain that. And as I'll outline at the end of this talk, we need a new kind of education. We need an education that really enables our children to think critically and to have the confidence to do that. I know that we try to do that, but we're not very successful. I'll explain why. And so I wrote Preparing a New World Education. I also wrote Memoirs of a Happy Teacher, which is being published under a new title, Teacher, Parent, Child, by a publisher. And I also wrote 5 Ways for Better Grades. And so, my friends, what I would like to share with you right now is that if we're going to help our children to learn better in school, we really have to understand how they learn and how school works. What I discovered is that school doesn't work on intelligence, school works on languages. And there are 2 languages school works on. One is mathematics, and the other is English, Russian, Chinese, Arabic, whatever it happens to be. And these work on rules. Now, if the child or the student at any age is able to understand that rule and practice it so they become competent, then they know how to think. The problem is that many students don't learn each rule as we give out rules. Basically, we give too many rules. We give too much information because school is a weeding out process. It wants to get rid of the kids who can't keep up to find out who will be the potential leaders in society and industry. In fact, school works on a 19th century political design purposely to process kids along without teaching them how to think. We teach them dualistic thinking, yes and no. So that at the end of their time, those who gain the top grades, they go to university where they aren't taught higher evaluators thinking. For there to be the responsibility in society and industry. Those who don't go to university are deprived of this higher evaluators' reasoning skills. So they will essentially be more compliant and then less fictitious and rebellious against their authority. This is a 19th century design that grew out of the Industrial Revolution and all the social and political problems that arose in the 19th century. We don't understand how school is still linked to this despite the social and political changes that arose in the 1960s. What I would like to explain here, that my understanding is that it's not the ability of the brain or intelligence that decides student ability, but the mind. And in having said that, any normally born child can obtain very, very high marks in school. I did. It works, I believe that the human being, the mind of the human being works on 2 factors. Number 1, am I safe? Number 2, what is the most interesting for me? Am I safe? It means that as a student, am I safe at home? Are my parents helping me? Are they stimulating me? Are they making my life fun and interesting, giving me self-confidence and helping me to orientate myself at each different environment? Or are my parents bullying me? Of course, some children are abused. And if I'm not safe at home, then my mind is trying to deal with that problem instead of dealing with the rule the teacher was giving me. Equally, if I'm not safe in my learning environment, and remember, of course, the classroom is a very competitive environment because everybody's trying to get more attention to the teacher to get a better mark. And of course, students then ridicule, bully, insult, and hurt other children or students quite purposely. So they'll pull them down. So if the mind is not happy in the learning environment, it's trying to find stability with those who are hurting them. So I want to be friends with him. How can I be friends with him? How can I be friends with her? I want people to like me. Equally with the teacher. If I feel I'm not safe with the teacher, I'm trying to think, how can I get this teacher to like me? And if my mind is drifting on these factors, then I'm not following the rules. If I'm safe in all this and I'm happy, then it's up to the teacher. If the teacher can give the information in a certain way so that every single student in that class, at whatever different level they've got, can keep up with that information, and I present that information in a fun, stimulating way, that every single person, every single student in that class will understand and practice each rule as I progress through the lesson. And then the whole class can get better marks. And I've been doing that for very many years. And if I just share the screen with you. So you can, okay. So I'm of course on LinkedIn, and my email address is here. On YouTube, there are 90 videos about for Roy Anderson education, if you're so interested. The books that I've mentioned, I have developed the Anderson Attitude Method of Teaching, and you can find out about that on this website, andersonroy.com. And there you'll get a great deal of help in how to help your students understand really what I'm talking about here. So coming back. What I realized is that I developed a theory called the art of sensitivity in awareness. Basically, I'm getting, are you still able to copy me? Can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you, Dr. Roy. However, the network is getting a little troublesome. Yeah.
Okay. If it goes, tell me, we'll go to back.
Sure. No, you're audible now. Yeah, go ahead. Please go ahead. Yeah.
So I developed the idea of the art of sensitivity in awareness. And basically what I mean here is that if the teacher is aware of the difficulty of each child, then they can be more sensitive to help them to learn. You know, I've worked with children who were said to be very dyslexic, even mentally retarded, and I found out that all I needed was to gain their confidence and their belief in me. And once I did that, and then went back to an earlier stage in their development and helped them to understand that and build up, they became phenomenal learners. Suddenly the box that they'd been put into disappeared. So I realized that to be sensitive to the needs of another human being is something we all need to do. Now, of course, the problem we have as a teacher is the system doesn't give us that time. It demands that we teach certain lessons through the syllabus and puts us under a lot of pressure to do that. And we have a lot of kids who are interested and disinterested and bored and making jokes and laughing. And we somehow got to find some way to get everybody organized and move through the lesson time. And I'll show you in a moment how I managed to do that. Sensitivity and awareness, of course, is for the student, to get them to calm down, to be sensitive to what they're doing. It is very simple if you think in the sense that if you like something, if it's fun for you, then you identify it, you interrogate this information very precisely, very clearly. And then you put this very neatly into your memory network, what associates with other information you sort with equal precision. You recognize immediately meaning. Then, of course, you use your language to explain what you find. So basically, as I mentioned, school works on language. So you have two children. One will, a young child, one will say, the sun is yellow. Another student will say, the sun is big, yellow, and hard. And you will give more marks to the student with a greater language ability. Now, genetically, we're all born with the same ability to develop language. The ability for language is not decided by genetic inheritance, it's decided by the social environment that we go through. So again and again, I find that the way that society operates, it tends to help children who come from parents who are better educated. And it gives those children a better chance in society. The reason why we do that comes back to why we think intelligence is genetic. And we don't have a very long time to talk here, so I would like to do as quickly as I can to go back and explain why we think intelligence is genetic. What I discovered was that in the 19th century, there was a great political turmoil in Europe. every country, there was various dissatisfaction. In 1848, there was a revolution in Paris that spilled over into Luxembourg, Belgium. Every country in Europe, except for England for a particular reason, went into a revolution. The ruling factors were terrified that their power would be taken away from them. And they went back to England, and they came back a little bit later and used military force to suppress this rebellion right throughout Europe. But from 1848 until 1914, the whole of Europe was a nest of spies and informers trying to find out who the socialists were and either put them in jail or get rid of them in some way to maintain the status quo. 19th century, of course, was the age of assassination. More monarchs ruling places.
Mr. Roy, the same problem as yesterday's. The audio is not clear. You'll have to go to the alternate one. Yeah. You can keep the presentation on this. Yeah. I've just kept you in.
My friends, are you able to hear me? Are you able to hear me? Hello?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm getting kind of okay. So
what you'll have to do is you'll have to put this one on the mute. Use this only for your presentation. And you'll have to put this one, which is on your iPhone, you'll have to put this for the audio piece. Yeah. Or you'll have to remove the PPT and then have to stick on that one device. Yeah.
But basically,
which is why I last shared with you, where have you landed up?
So basically, what I said was that
it is echoing.
The 19th century, was that clear?
Same problem, doctor. No, you're not audible. Yeah.
Can you try it now? Put your phone on, unmute your phone.
Am I clear now?
Yes.
This is kind of exciting. But basically what I discovered was that in this political turmoil in the 19th century, which had this devastation of modern civilization, a man called Francis Galton came up with the idea that if you inherit the nose and the chin of your family line, so you inherit the brain of the family, the brain of the family line can be recognized by the social positioning of the family. So if the king had a certain nose, and the king had the brain to be king, if the blacksmith had a certain chin, or a certain nose, that meant he had the brain to be a blacksmith and no more. It's very simple, except the basis of what we today call cognitive psychology.
Professor, sorry to interrupt. Could you try holding the phone closer to your mouth?
Well,
yeah.
I phone on mute. I'm not talking to the computer.
It's breaking up quite a lot.
Well, I'll go back to
Because this is a very important presentation, what I would suggest is that either you can send this part, whatever little part you can share with us as well, right? Because the audio is a little troublesome right now. It is not coming through. And if you can just be on one device to begin with, Professor, that will help.
Okay.
Otherwise, if you will use two audio pieces together, they will just echo. Yeah. No, coming, but faintly, very faint. This is the similar stuff which happened yesterday when we were spoken. For the first 30 minutes was fabulous. And suddenly I don't know what happened to the audio, it died out for that matter.
So please try now using your phone for the audio. You have unmuted yourself, your device. If you can raise your hand by using your phone device.
It is iPhone.
Can you hear me now?
So we have to unmute his laptop device, and he has to unmute. We have to unmute the laptop one, and he has to unmute his phone device. Then only we can connect with the audio thing.
That's what we said.
Okay. The host is not.
Mr. Roy, you are not audible.
Can you please unmute? Hello? Oh.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you please
Yeah, we can. That's fine. That's fine. The only thing is that because those two devices are adjacent to each other, the problem is that the voice eventually gets diluted or echoed, right? That is a problem. Otherwise, the computer device audio is not coming through.
I think Professor can't unmute his phone.
Gaurav, could I suggest one thing? If the presentation is sent to you, and if you could on cue move the slides, then Roy could just stay on his microphone, so that will not cause the interference that is happening right now.
Yeah, in fact, that was the alternative I gave him last evening. The problem is he has a presentation of 400 slides, and that's his. So what he told me was it will be difficult for him to share with me.
Okay. My friends,
is this uploaded by any chance? Roy, do you have this uploaded somewhere?
I think it sounds better now.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Go ahead.
That's perfect.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for bearing with me. Basically, Francis Galton is a very prominent member in the society.
Yes, keep it next to your mouth.
And what he wrote in 1869 called Hereditary Genius. And in this book, he explained that, you can see the bell curve here. He explained that anybody of a high would naturally pass on the genes or the blood to enable their offspring to have the same social responsibility. This was very important in the political turmoil of the middle of the 19th century. And every society, every science that we've got, including genetics and neurology, has built upon this. Now, in 1904, of course, they didn't really know what intelligence is, and today we still dispute what it is. But in the 19th century, intelligence was supposed to contain also social factors, criminality, religious desire, and all these things were mixed in with intelligence. And because in the beginning of the factory processing, we needed to find out who could do what kind of job, so they needed to simplify intelligence. Spearman came up with the idea in 1904. Well, let's just say we inherit something and it develops. Now, the problem is, and this is a big talk to go, I'll just very simplify it here. Right-wing politicians, right-wing psychologists argue that intelligence is 80% inherited and 20% developed. Left-wing psychologists and politicians argue that intelligence is 20% inherited and 80% developed. And because they can't prove it, which you can't prove intelligence is, you can't measure intelligence actually, they say it's 50-50, but it's not. As I'll explain to you in a moment, we don't inherit intelligence. In fact, we don't have intelligence. There is no part of the brain that actually is dedicated to intelligence. The reasoning that we do came from Spearman in 1904. We said that one day we will find a segment of intelligence in the brain. Well, we never did, because we don't have intelligence. Intelligence is only a word we've created to try to evaluate the competence and the language of two individual people. What we fail to understand is how that ability originated and where it came from. Now, I've done a lot of work in this, and we don't have time at this moment to go into it. But basically, and again, with the time factor, there's a lot I can talk about here. But basically, I will explain to you that by the 30th week of gestation, the fetus has a memory for 10 minutes. What is very important from after the moment of birth is the love and the dedication that the 1995, Risley and Hart studied a lot of parents, and they found out that parents who came from an academic background, they raised their children with very high language skills. They told them stories. They helped them to know high questions. And those children developed 30 million words more in their vocabulary at the age of 3 than other children lesser raised. So we might say, for example, that in a population, 80% of the parents don't know how to raise their children. These 80% about, they just raise they love children, they create their child, and when the child is 5 years old, they give this child to the school system and say to the teacher, you do the rest. But the other 20%, they prepare their child for school. They teach them high language skills. And during the school process, they're constantly helping the child to understand what they didn't in the lesson, and they give them confidence. And confidence is something that's really lacking in the educational process, even as adults. If we as adults all got together around a table to learn, we would find that we would feel that somebody's better than us, and we would feel a little bit embarrassed or shy to ask the teacher a question. It's a human factor. What we need to change about education is we need to understand really that the ability of the child or the student is not something that's determined by birth, but is determined by processes, by programs. Look at this example here. I'll show you. You can see here on the screen, there's 2 students. Now, each one have been asked to write an essay, geography, history, humanities, whatever. Let's look at the boy Peter. When the Peter's asked a question, he looks at the question, he gets an idea, and he starts to write. And halfway through, he says, what else can I do? Oh, I'll write something else. And immediately he's finished, he puts his hand up, because Peter thinks that if he can show the teacher that he's finished first, the teacher will think he's the best. Well, he never is. But if we look at, she says to herself, what is the question really asking me to do? What do I really have to give here? And she finds two answers, two goals. And she works out the sub-goals to get to that. She's very clear, very methodical in the thinking process. And she writes some ideas down. So she writes the introduction. She knows how to make an introduction. You know, I went into a class of 15-year-old children, and I asked them to write me a story. As I walked around, out of 30 kids, only 2 of these children knew how to present an introduction. They'd all been told write an introduction, but they didn't know what it meant. And so she works through paragraph by paragraph, explaining her story. And when she gets to the end, she knows that the conclusion at the ending is what really makes the reader excited. So she's practiced it. And when she's got the best ending she can think about, she does something that Peter never knew. She checks. She checks spelling, she checks syntax, she checks grammar, check. She doesn't stop checking until the teacher takes it away. At the end of the lesson, Jeannie always gets, and Peter always gets average marks, only because Peter didn't understand the strategies that Jeannie learned. So basically what I would say to you is that if you're familiar with this distribution curve, which again is very fallible, the students who do top marks, they do so because they are because they can.
Professor?
Lesson by lesson.
Professor?
Yeah?
I'm really sorry, but we're getting about 75% of what you're saying, which is really frustrating because we can sort of follow it, but I think we're missing quite a bit. And some of the other people are also, have written into Gaurav and said it's. So perhaps we could do something where you could record a presentation like this and perhaps send that to us, or maybe Gaurav, and the team can put their heads together to find some solution to getting your message across, because I think it's really interesting. It's really relevant to what we're doing, but it's just really annoying that the connections are not working very well. So,
Robert, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Well,
so let's take a quick poll. Can I have a quick thumbs up if you want? You can hear this. If you can hear this, we continue with this. Otherwise, we'll have to take up a quick call on this. Let's have a quick virtual show of thumbs up. Professor, give me a moment, please. Yeah.
We can hear you for 75% of it, but it's the important 25% we can't.
Yeah.
It's really frustrating.
Okay. Okay, I'll try to talk a bit clearer.
It's not really that. It's the audio system somehow. It just keeps cutting out and coming out and then going back again, and also cutting out, and then suddenly you're saying everything very quickly because it's catching up with itself as well, which is really annoying. And I think it's going to detract from what you're trying to say. I think it would be important for us to hear what you're trying to say. It just may not be the best way to do it.
Robert, is that better? Is this better? Can you hear me now? Okay,
yeah,
well, I'll try to.
Dragging out a little bit.
I'll try to do it this way. Okay, so let me show you here. This is an example of what happens here. Do you remember I talked to you before about the art of sensitivity and awareness, and how if you're interested, this information goes clearly into your memory and then you're able to explain yourself. Look at this example of a teacher showing two children how to draw or how to write the letter A. It's just an example. It could be Pythagoras or anything. Now, the little girl is very happy with the teacher. She loves the teacher and she wants to be like the teacher. So she does the A the best way she can. It's very similar. Now, the boy is happy too, but his mind's on other things. He wants to go and play football. So while he's drawing the A, his mind is on the game, is on the break. In the break, he wants to play football. So his mind is A, who's got the ball? A, what time is the bell going to ring? A, who will be in my team? He has poor concentration. Now, the end of the lesson, the teacher will accept all this variation of ability and say, great, everybody's done it their way. We'll move on to the next lesson. But you can see here that the ability of the boy to write the A was caused by lack of attention. The problem is the next lesson and the next year, this becomes said to be his ability. And that's the biggest problem we've got, because then we think that this ability is somehow inherited and somehow beyond our ability to help. Now, I spent decades working with individuals. I just give you an example here. Now, this is an essay written by I think a 17-year-old girl, and you can see how she's. I can't remember if she was 11 or I think about 15 or something like that. But you can see how illegible it is. But there's nothing really wrong in what she's written, but she gets average marks. Her marks are 5 out of 10, and they always have been 5 out of 10. So she believes she is only a 5 out of 10 ability. The system believes she's only 5 out of 10. And she's been moved right throughout the educational system as an average student. And so therefore she will fail to get into university, and then she will fail to get the higher evaluators' thinking skills that would enable her to be a more responsible person in society. But I said to this girl, look, I want to show you how to do beautiful writing. I did copperplate writing, and I showed her very slowly how to do an A and a B. And she said to me, wow, that's so beautiful. When she said to me, it's beautiful, I realized that then she had the drive to want to be this way. So she put the effort in. And so 2 weeks later, this is what she wrote. Now, you can see she's been in school, I can't remember, 7 years. And this has been accepted, but 2 weeks later, she did that. And so really, how we teach is what they become. Now, one of the big things I really want to explain here, and of course, this is the problem we have with the pandemic, because without the classroom environment, we are really segregated. We are really forced to be distant from our students. So in this pandemic, and when it arises, and when the students are forced to learn at home, then it's very necessary that we get the parents with us. There are a lot of studies that show that when the mother, the father, is sitting with the child when they're learning, the child has more confidence to interact, they believe themselves more, and they concentrate more. When that parent goes away, the mind of the child drifts, and some play games and things like that. In the in-class, when you're talking about an in-class learning, explain to you that the idea we have of rows of desks is a political agenda designed so that children of different language skills and different efforts will be able to focus more and develop better with a single teacher. We have smaller classrooms today, but you will know that the child at the back, they can't see and they can't hear as clearly as the girl in the front. Oh, they'll say I can hear and I can see, but the child in the front, they have a certain chemistry, a certain kind of feeling, an identity with the teacher that encourages them to believe more in themselves. Now, so of course we have this. And so basically, when you have these rows of desks, the teacher is limited in how they can help each student progress. Now, what normally happens in a classroom is the teacher will give the students some work. They'll take the books to the staff room and they'll mark them. But just let me show you what happens here. We have a paragraph here. Now, what the teacher, of course, I just went into a staff room and there were 40 books and I just picked up a few of them. And I just show you what happened here. Because of the factor of time, the teacher doesn't have the time or the inclination to mistake they make. So they just say, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. And I give you 8 out of 10, see me or try better or something like that. That's what we do. But in this these 5 lines, there are 6 mistakes that the teacher didn't show that child. So the child is not learning how to improve themselves. They see a red mark, they say, oh, it's okay, it's okay. So we have to change a way that we interact with our students. And I find this arrangement very, very successful. Unfortunately, I see teachers sitting down with this. That's no good. You have to physically be around. And as you're walking around, you have an eye contact. So with this eye contact, you have a kind of presence with the student. So you know that if they don't understand something by the eye, one-to-one ability to help each student. So over the lesson, over the period of a year, you can help bit by bit by bit. So there is a better development within each student. And this also enables the students to have more confidence, to feel that they can inquire more and ask the teacher more. Because when they're set in rows, as they are here, they're very conscious of being ridiculed or laughed at. Now, as I explained to you, the school works on rules. If you know the rule, you know how to think. So you're given a learning task and you can negotiate through this very easily because you know how to think. Therefore, this inspires you to want to go beyond what the teacher gives you because it's fun, it's self-rewarding. And then you apply this to other areas, other disciplines, and then you become creative. With new classrooms, new designs, new implements for learning, creativity, causing creativity. I've been in schools with a huge sign saying creativity. It makes no difference at all to the mind of the student. Creativity comes from within you when you know you're good at something and it's fun. So if we can teach the rules that students learn bit by bit better, so each student will be more competent at what they're doing. When they don't learn those rules and they see the students next to them doing something which they think they can't do, so the human student says, well, they're better than me, I can't do this, I hate this subject, and I want to go home. It's all about helping students to learn to keep up with the rules. Now, we're running out of time here, but one of the methods I found very successful, by the way, I explained to you that I failed school completely when I was 17. For 10 years, I was a lecturer in one of the best medical universities in Japan. And I had 120 students, and I found that I had to help them to learn by themselves. So what I did, and I find this very successful, put them in rows. You have row A and row B. And so the student at row A will ask the student at row B something relative to the lesson, and they'll talk to each other. Now, it's very important that you keep momentum here. So after a few moments, I clap my hands, and then the student at the end of row B, they move to the other end, and everybody shuffles up and changes the partner. If you begin the lesson by this method, so that each student asks the other student what happened previously, then the student's mind are more prepared or more receptive to what you're going to give. We make a terrible mistake when we just let the students come in, they sit down, and they wait for us to switch them on. We need to have those minds working before we give them that turn on. And also during the lesson, I use this because, of course, some children will have lost concentration and their minds have drifted, and they won't be able to keep up with what's going. So again, this enables the students to talk to their friends and say, what happened? What did that mean? Oh, like that. And again, at the end of the lesson, you can ask them to do this so they can help each other with anything they didn't understand. The purpose here is to make sure that every single child understands what went on in that lesson and understands it and has the confidence to interact with each other and with the teacher. I don't know, how long do I have, brother? How long do I have to talk to you?
Professor, 5 more minutes.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then let me round this off, my friends, by explaining that the purpose of school was never to teach children how to think, because society never wanted a citizen worker to think too much. They were to be compliant with the authority of the social and industrial managers. And we still use that system without realizing it. We use various ideas by psychologists, Howard Gardner's ideas of various intelligences and learning styles. but they don't make any difference to the child, to the ability of the individual child to take more control of their information and keep up with it. So we need to find ways of giving our children more confidence in the interaction in the lesson, because it's only by the confidence to interact that they can say, wait a minute, my brain sees it this way. I want to understand why your brain sees it in a different way. And it's only by doing that, by that interaction, can the student change their understanding to follow the guideline of the teacher. So now we come into the future. Why do we need to change education? For the past 6,000 years, we've been creating jobs. A job enables the citizen worker to be responsible in their society. They have a family, they go to work, they earn some money, and they moan and they groan about dissatisfaction, but they are compliant. The society works. There's a smooth movement where everybody complies, everybody works with each other. There's no dangerous society, really, that we live in, because we have work. In order to obtain work, we have people who take the raw resources from the earth. We take the oil, and we take the iron ore, and we apply heat. So we use these molecules by heat. We heat gas, and it goes to liquid and to plastics. We heat iron ore, it goes to steel. And then we employ people in factories, thousands and thousands of people employed in factories, and the processing and the production factories, and sales and administration, and sales and distribution. 80% of a population, obtains their work through the mass movement of molecules. This is how we obtain stability in a society. We've heard of nanotechnology. Many of you may not realize that the word nano is a trade name. So we have nanofibers, nanophones, whatever. The reality developing behind nanotechnology is very more disturbing. The concept, and there are proto-models of this in process. There are what we call dissemblers and assemblers. They're, of course, microscopic. We can't see them because they're too small. But a dissembler can drill into any substance, rock, soil, oil, clay, or whatever, and according to its computer program, can analyze the molecular structure, dissemble that into individual atoms, break the bonds down. An assembler can then follow in, and according to its computer program, can bond these atoms to create a new compound. And essentially, one machine creates another machine, so they're self-replicating. And there are proto-models of this already in existence. What this means is that we can forget the idea of microchips. Nanomachines are something very, very different and very, very more disturbing. What it basically means is that sometime in the future, we will not need human beings to work. Much of the work will be done by machines. This means that we face very high unemployment. This means that our future generation will fear great social instability. People will not be responsible for themselves. If I have a job and I lose my job, after 6 months, I don't believe in myself. Therefore, I don't believe in my society. Now, we carry 5-8% unemployed in every country as a backup. But if we have 50 or 60% of unemployed, then these people will not believe in their society. And therefore, they will be not respective to society rules. This means the only way that society can be safe is to increase surveillance and increase security. And that's the end of democracy. What I was particularly concerned about is that we identify, we go to work because we are conditioned. We recognize celebrated people, Richard Branson, movie stars, whatever, or the lottery. We think that one day we can be richer than we are now. And we recognize people who have failed, and therefore we are frightened of this failure. So we are forced to, we conform. We go to work and we do the best we can for our families. But this idea of this distribution, this standard distribution, it can be divided. So instead of having a conglomeration of people, we can have people of different regions. For example, people in New York and people in the Amazon jungle. They are raised on different values of intelligence. What I'm concerned about here is that if our society globally creates a situation where some people are required and a greater mass are not required, then the system will reward those who are required. They'll give them good housing, good security, good chances for their future. And of course, their children then will learn and develop higher values of intelligence through their environment. But the other people who are deprived of this opportunity of work or obtain much less, then they will live in a more, their environment will deteriorate more. Crime, abuse, drug abuse, all these will go up. And as that goes up, the ability of the parents to raise their child will go down. And so you will see over generations two kinds of, instead of all mixed together, we may have a situation where you will have children who are more intelligent and those groups who are less intelligent. And the problem then is that if you have a society where people think, okay, we are safe and we don't want other people to mix with us, then we will defend ourselves. Now, of course, in one country, this is already happening. You can see that there are people on one side of the fence who do not want to mix with people on the other side. So these people are confined. They're not allowed to move out of this for their lives, their children and their grandchildren. They are conditioned to live within a settlement. And of course, it's happening also in South America. At the same time, global warming is a reality. In the next 60 or 70 years, London and New York can be underwater. Now, this doesn't mean that people are going to get, wet feet. It means that at some time in the future, globally, we are facing a mass movement of people moving down from the higher lands where there's no glaciers now to provide drinking water, people moving in from the coast because the water levels are rising. And we are all moving together to try to find security and stability for the ones that we love, everybody fighting against each other. And it's going to be chaotic. And the only way that we can maintain a sense of stability is to raise the level of security and surveillance by which we live under, so that we lose this concept of democracy. And of course, you're aware that this is already happening. And once I began to dedicate myself to help children, once I found out how we actually do learn and how we can help them to learn better, so then I realized how the society worked, how the global situation worked, and how we are failing to realize that we need to teach our children to be more self-responsible, to be more disciplined in how they learn and in how they behave with other human beings. Because if we fail in that, as our fathers failed within us, then our children are going to live in a world that will be controlled by artificial intelligence, and they will not have the democracy that we've got today. Well, my friends, in the time I've got, hello?
Sorry, yes.
Hello?
Sorry, did you finish?
Well, I can go on and on and on, but
yeah,
I
think that may be a really good final point. Is that okay? I'm sorry you had such a hard time. Well, really, thank you very much. That was a wonderful, I think from what we could get from that, there's obviously a huge amount of work there that we could look into. And I really recommend to everybody that that they follow up with Professor Roy's work, because he's got some, actually, sorry, so Gaurav has asked me to finish off the session, and so that's why I'm talking now. I've been looking, I've been doing research into coming to India for about a year now. I was going to come, and then I didn't. So, and I'm looking and I'm meeting lots of Indian principals and listening to the people. And one of the things I think that we could take from what Dr. Roy is saying, Professor Roy is saying, is what I'm hearing some people talk, and maybe they don't believe this, but it's in the language, and I know in my own case, it's taken a long time to get this out of my language, that one child is more clever than another child, rather than one child has had different experiences and different upbringing than another child. And so I think that if you start to think about that when you're going for your teaching, that's really important. Thank you very much, Professor Roy. I hope that we will be able to do something to be able to get your work to the membership a little bit less of an uncomfortable way. I'm really sorry you had the double thing of bad connection and being at the end of the day, which is really difficult. I think you did really well to keep going. So thank you very much. I think actually those people who stayed with it and listened, I think they probably began to understand, you know, the things that you were saying. So the main points came across. So that's really good. So I'm going to wrap up for today. It's a 12 o'clock start tomorrow, slightly later than today. And I'd just like to say some of the things that really came out of this for me. I'm not going to go on for very long. If you just bear with me for maybe 30 seconds. When I looked at the NEP document, as you'll see from this month's Voice, IPN Voice magazine, I've got an article in there, my favorite sentence from the NEP. And that sentence, I'm going to go on about it forever. That sentence is, learning will be holistic, integrated, engaging, and enjoyable. And I think today we've hit on all of those points in the sessions. So we've seen the call from all of these experts about holistic education. And we're not, I think one of the speakers said, we're not teaching subjects, we're teaching children, or we're developing children. We're helping children to develop into people who can be independent and develop themselves. And then the integrated part, bringing in subjects, allowing people to understand that that it can be just as difficult and just as academic and to be a musician or an artist as it is to be a physicist or a mathematician. And these things are not really different. And I really love the one thing that came out to me, which was a new thing, and I hadn't questioned it, but was this co-curricular business. I think it's so good because curriculum for me means the experience of the child within the school. And so those things are the experience of the child within the school. So integrating things. And then the final thing, engagement. I think not just the learning experience of the engagement of the children, but what we heard today was also about engaging the teachers. And if we have a different approach to our leadership, and we engage teachers, because another sentence in the document, NEP 2020, says that teachers should be central to the implementation of this policy. And you can't do that unless you believe in your teachers. So we need to get good relationships with our teachers. We need to be talking with them. We need to be helping them to grow in confidence. We need to be inclusive with them. So that the older teachers at the end of their career who say, oh, I'm not sure how I want to change. All you have to do is say, do you agree with that sentence? That children should be developing to be the best learners they can be. And if they say yes, then you say, right, carry on being a good teacher. And those young teachers that come in because they've got nothing better to do than be a teacher, and that they don't really understand what being a teacher is, and they're not really, you can excite them through this new role of a teacher. You can make them excited by engaging in developing young people. And anyone can do that because that's what good parents do. So on that, I'm going to end the day, and hopefully I'll see you all tomorrow. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert. In fact, I just wanted to quickly say thank you to Professor Roy. Professor Roy, you are showing something. Do not worry. We will invite you the next time when you have a better audio piece as well. So, but having said this, you did try your best. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Robert, for enabling this. Everybody, we start tomorrow at sharp 12 o'clock, which is being a Sunday, but we have a fabulous interactions tomorrow as well. So at sharp tomorrow, we start this, and we will conclude with a musical performance tomorrow in the evening. So we will have a little surprise for all of us, which I've in a way broken for that matter, right? So good. We see you, everyone. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Stay safe. Professor Roy, we connect very soon with you as well. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.